You are never just living on Earth. You've been imprisoned in a reality that was built to keep you blind. The life you think you've lived, the choices you thought were yours, the beliefs you've clung to, none of it came from you. From the moment you arrived here, a system far more ancient and complex than anything taught in schools took hold of your soul. And at the center of that system is Saturn. They told you Saturn was just a planet, just a gas giant floating in the void. But what they didn't tell you is that Saturn may be the control hub for a reality that's been manufactured to trap you. Not in chains or cages, but in loops, time loops, soul traps, illusions. The truth has been hidden in plain sight, coded in symbols, buried in myths, and dismissed by science. But if you're here, it means something in you is ready to see through it. They said Saturn was just another planet, spinning silently in space, too far to matter. But for thousands of years, Saturn has held a darker reputation, one shrouded in mystery, myth, and fear. In the ancient world, Saturn was not just a celestial body. It was a god, a force of karma, restriction, and time. Known by different names, Cronus, El, Shani, this entity wasn't worshipped for benevolence. It was feared for its power to bind, to limit, to control. And now, through the lens of esoteric knowledge and forgotten teachings, a disturbing idea emerges. Saturn may be more than a symbol of control. It may be the architect of it. Look at its rings. Beautiful, hypnotic, perfectly symmetrical. But what if they're more than just frozen debris? Some researchers suggest Saturn's rings act as a kind of frequency fence, a vibrational boundary that distorts and contains human consciousness. A multi-dimensional cage that we can't see, but one that affects us every second of our lives. It's not just the physical rings, but the frequencies they emit. Saturn produces a powerful electromagnetic hum, one that has been recorded by NASA itself. What if that hum isn't random? What if it's a broadcast? A signal transmitting into our subconscious minds, distorting our sense of time, dulling our memory, and anchoring us to the illusion. Ancient occult traditions regarded Saturn as the planet of fate, the bringer of time, death, and cycles. But what if that mythology wasn't poetic? It was literal. What if Saturn is the mechanism behind the loop? The idea that time is linear is deeply flawed. What we perceive as past, present, and future may just be programmed intervals in a repeating simulation. And Saturn sits at the center of it, both in the sky and in the symbolic system that governs this matrix. The more you look, the more you see Saturn's influence is everywhere. From religious robes and architecture to financial systems and legal structures, the fingerprint of Saturn, the god of limits, is embedded in our reality. Not metaphorically, literally. You see it in the black cube, in the false dichotomies of morality, in the obsession with rules, punishment, and ritual. It's been hiding in plain sight for centuries, worshipped unknowingly by millions under different guises, all feeding into a vibrational grid that tightens around the soul. But what happens after death? Where does the soul go when it leaves the body? Some believe that instead of ascending into light or resting in peace, the soul is intercepted, pulled into an artificial light that isn't divine at all. A trap, a loop, an illusion created to convince the soul it must return, reincarnate, and try again. Who benefits from this? That's the question. And over time, the answer begins to point back to Saturn, not as a planet, but as a multidimensional construct of control, the grand filter through which all perception is bent. Some truths about Saturn's hidden function can't even be shared here. Subscribe to Insights Academy in the description to get access to deeper insights and receive a free copy of The Kybalion, limited time only. What if karma isn't a natural law, but a mechanism of entrapment? What if reincarnation isn't about growth, but about reset, erasing memory, severing knowledge, and sending the soul back into a physical form so the system can harvest its energy again? If that's true, then everything we think we know about life and death has been inverted. Saturn, the so-called Lord of Time, may actually be the warden of a prison far more sophisticated than bars and locks. It's a frequency prison, one where souls are farmed and cycled endlessly in a false construct called Earth. And if that's the case, then everything changes. Life isn't about evolution, it's about escape. But to escape, we must first understand how deep the illusion runs. There's a reason you've always felt something was off, like a part of you didn't belong here, like the world was scripted and hollow at its core. That feeling isn't madness. It's memory, buried beneath lifetimes of manipulation. And when you begin tracing the control back far enough, beyond Saturn, beyond the systems that govern this physical world, you arrive at something far older, something ancient, intelligent, and parasitic: the archons. In the lost teachings of the Gnostics, long before institutional religion rewrote the rules of reality, the archons were described not as demons in the cartoonish sense, but as mind parasites, entities that do not create but mimic, that do not build but distort. They feed on ignorance, fear, and suffering, emotions they carefully engineer. And just like any parasite, they require a host. In this case, humanity. These beings are said to operate from the astral and etheric layers, just outside the range of our physical senses. But their reach is felt everywhere, from our thoughts to our dreams, to the structures we've come to accept as normal. The archons, according to ancient texts, were born from a false creator, a flawed being who shaped a counterfeit version of reality. This false reality was not born of love, but of order, restriction, and control. And Saturn, in this telling, is the broadcasting tower for that counterfeit signal. It is the central node in a vast system designed to trap souls in density, time, and illusion. The archons use this system to insert thoughts, manipulate beliefs, and distort perception, turning you against yourself without you ever realizing you've been hijacked. Think of all the moments you've second-guessed your intuition, the times you felt a surge of creativity, only for a voice to whisper, "Who do you think you are?" That's not just doubt, that's programming. And programming has authors. They work through systems, religions that demand obedience to invisible gods, education that praises memorization but punishes curiosity, governments that create the illusion of choice while enforcing compliance. All of it designed to create low vibrational states: fear, shame, guilt, division. Why? Because those frequencies are food to the archons. They cannot feed on joy, love, or clarity, so they twist reality to keep us starving spiritually, but full of just enough distraction to never break through. And make no mistake, they are not omnipotent. Their power lies in secrecy, in getting you to believe their thoughts are your own, in keeping you focused on survival, so you never remember your true nature. They fear awakening, not because it destroys them directly, but because an awakened mind can no longer be manipulated. And once enough people break the spell, the system begins to crack. Saturn, in this light, becomes their amplifier. It emits not just frequency, but structure, the mathematical blueprint for the reality we experience. And through that structure, the archons install limitations, belief systems, moral codes, false binaries, fear of death, worship of authority. They don't want you to see yourself as infinite, sovereign, or divine. They want you to believe you're small, broken, and dependent, because only then are you manageable. But what if none of this is who you really are? What if the despair, the fear, the confusion, what if none of it was ever yours to begin with? The archons don't just hide truth, they erase memory. They bury your soul's history under layers of distraction, reincarnation, and trauma, resetting your identity with every lifetime. They keep you in loops where you forget, comply, suffer, and repeat. And the most dangerous part of it all? Most people defend the system that enslaves them. That's how good the illusion is. But illusions only work if you don't look too closely. And the moment you start seeing the pattern, the recycled pain, the engineered division, the hollow promises of fulfillment, the veil starts to slip. The archons aren't gods, they're parasites. And parasites only survive as long as the host remains unaware. It's not your mind they fear losing, it's your awareness. Because once that switch is on, the game is no longer theirs to play. You've been here before. The faces may change, the stories might differ, but the feeling is the same, like you're running in circles, repeating patterns you can't quite explain. What if that déjà vu, that strange sense of familiarity with places you've never visited, people you've never met, isn't just imagination? What if it's residue from a memory you were never meant to keep? The reincarnation cycle has been sold to us as a spiritual journey, a path of evolution through experience. But what if that, too, is part of the trap? Time, as we perceive it, is not as linear as we've been taught. Ancient traditions, quantum physics, and mystics throughout history have all hinted at the same truth. Time loops, repetition, echoes of the same events played over and over, disguised as progress. And at the center of that manipulation sits Saturn, the so-called Lord of Time, casting its slow, heavy influence not just over the physical world, but over the soul's journey through it. The more you observe, the more it becomes clear. The past isn't behind us. It's playing on repeat. Saturn doesn't operate alone. There's a theory, one echoed in both esoteric circles and intuitive experiences, that the moon acts as a relay station. That together, Saturn and the moon form a binary system not just of celestial bodies, but of control nodes. One emits, the other reflects. One programs, the other distributes. When souls leave the body at death, many report a tunnel of light, a feeling of being drawn upwards, of seeing loved ones, guides, or divine beings waiting for them. But what if that light isn't salvation? What if it's bait? This is what some call the false light trap, a brilliantly constructed illusion designed to mimic real love, real peace, real transcendence, only to intercept the soul, strip its memory, and send it right back into another incarnation. Another round in the loop, another life of confusion, fear, struggle, and amnesia. Not because your soul failed, but because it was never given the chance to leave. Those who escape near-death experiences with full memory often describe moments of seeing beyond this construct, catching a glimpse of the machine behind the light, a brief awareness that what was waiting for them was not benevolent, but mechanical, that they were being pushed to reincarnate, guilted by visions of karma, promises of healing, or obligations to others. And always, the same result: return. Karma is sold as justice, but what if it's just another form of debt, one that ensures you always have unfinished business? What if your memories are wiped, not to protect you, but to disempower you? Because a soul with full memory is a soul that cannot be manipulated, a soul that remembers its divinity, its origins, its power, won't play the game. That's why the reset is necessary. That's why the loop exists. And Saturn, broadcasting its relentless hum, enforces that loop. Every cycle through time, every repetition of history, every generation that seems to make the same mistakes, they're symptoms of a reality coded to repeat. Just like a looped simulation. Just like a dream that never ends unless you wake up inside it. Think about how your own life has unfolded. The habits you struggle to break. The relationships that mirror each other. The dreams that feel more real than waking life. What if those are the fragments slipping through? What if those moments of insight, of intense familiarity, are the soul remembering what it was told to forget? There's no punishment for breaking the cycle, only freedom. But first, you have to see it. You have to be willing to challenge the stories about life and death that were handed to you. The stories that insist this is all there is, that suffering is necessary, that progress is slow and earned. Because when you start to step outside of time, you realize the trap isn't eternal. But your awareness can be. If the loop exists, it can be broken. And the key isn't in escaping Saturn's gravity. It's in refusing to play by its rules. You've seen it before, though you may not have realized it. A black cube, simple, silent, and ominous. It appears in religious sites, corporate logos, academic traditions, and elite rituals. It's not just a shape, it's a signature, a marker of allegiance to something most will never understand, and even fewer will dare to question. Behind its geometric simplicity lies one of the most potent symbols of control tied to Saturn, the god of time, restriction, and structure. The black cube is Saturnian. In ancient esoteric systems, Saturn has long been associated with the cube, a six-sided object representing limitation, containment, and material density. In three-dimensional space, the cube is the most efficient symbol of control. It binds, it confines, it defines the edges of a space, and refuses anything beyond its borders. It's not just a symbol, it's a concept, a worldview, one where freedom is replaced with form, where the infinite is reduced to the measurable. Look at Mecca. Millions circle the Kaaba, a literal black cube. In ritual submission to a cosmic order they are told not to question. Look at judges' robes, graduation caps, the architecture of elite financial institutions. They all incorporate black cube symbolism, consciously or not. Why? Because the cube represents allegiance to structure, to hierarchy, to the rule of Saturn. But there's more. Modern culture, too, reflects this pattern. Major corporations use cube-inspired logos, often dark, often sharp, always precise. These aren't artistic coincidences. They're energetic signatures, reinforcements of the same grid, the same system. Every time we participate in those rituals, put on the square hat, bow before the cube, recite the pledge, stand for the flag, we're reaffirming the control structure without ever knowing it. It's not about religion or nationalism or pride. It's about consent. And consent doesn't have to be conscious. That's the brilliance of it. The system gets your energetic agreement through symbolism, repetition, and ritual. It hides in plain sight because it knows most will never look deeper than the surface. The cube also appears in physics, in quantum fields, in sacred geometry. The tesseract, the hypercube, is often linked with time manipulation and alternate dimensions. What if the symbol doesn't just represent Saturn's control but anchors it? What if the widespread use of this shape, ritualized across cultures and systems, actually reinforces the frequency of the matrix? Every repeated symbol, every ritualistic motion, every subconscious association adds to the grid's coherence. It strengthens the spell. And yet, we are told it's tradition, that it's innocent, that it's just a shape. But nothing repeated for thousands of years, across religions, continents, and empires, is ever just a shape. The cube is there to condition you into reverence for what it represents: boundaries, obedience, form over essence, hierarchy over individuality. Even the term box reflects this control. Think of how often you're told to think outside the box. Why? Because from birth you're placed inside one. Not just in classrooms or office cubicles, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You're boxed into beliefs, boxed into fears, boxed into identities. The cube is a cage dressed as order. But what happens when you step outside it? When you see it not as sacred, but as strategic? You begin to question everything it stands for. The cube loses its power the moment you see it for what it truly is: a signal of allegiance to a system that fears your awakening more than anything else. Saturn's grip isn't only cosmic, it's cultural, and the black cube is one of its most potent tools. But symbols only control when their meanings remain hidden. Expose them, and the energy shifts. Every time you decode a symbol, you weaken its spell. Every time you refuse to perform a ritual unconsciously, you reclaim a piece of your sovereignty. The cube is only strong because we keep feeding it. And the moment we stop, it starts to crumble. What if the world you experience every day isn't the real world at all? What if your thoughts, your memories, your senses, even your instincts, have been quietly intercepted and redirected by something designed to keep you in a state of sleep? This isn't just a metaphor. It's not a theory for the sake of mystery. The system that governs this false reality doesn't need to imprison your body when it can hijack your mind. Saturn isn't merely a symbol of structure, it's a frequency. And just like a radio station, it transmits a signal. This signal doesn't blare through speakers or appear on screens. It resonates through dimensions, subtly bending how you interpret time, identity, and even possibility. You wake up, follow a schedule, pursue goals handed to you, fear outcomes you were trained to fear, and chase a version of success that never seems to satisfy. That isn't free will. That's frequency conditioning. The architects of this system, whether you call them archons, elite bloodlines, or interdimensional gatekeepers, don't need to chain you. They just need you to mistake the cage for reality. And once you've accepted that, everything else falls into place. You self-regulate. You self-limit. You believe you're thinking for yourself, but your choices are pre-scripted within a narrow spectrum of acceptable thoughts, feelings, and desires. And you never question who built the walls around you, because you've been conditioned to believe there are no walls at all. Look closely, and you'll see it. The repetition in your life that mimics algorithms. The way your memories seem selective, foggy, just out of reach, when you need them most. The strange distortions in time. How some moments fly by, while others stretch unnaturally. The looping of history. The collective amnesia around truth. These aren't random glitches. They are intentional distortions in the signal you're living inside. You've heard the phrase, reality is what you make of it. But if your perception is hijacked, then the reality you're making is still just a program. Think of it like a dream. In a dream, you believe everything around you is real until the moment you realize it's not. And then suddenly the rules change. Gravity becomes fluid. The environment shifts. You remember that you're the dreamer, not the prisoner. That's what awakening feels like in this life. A snap, a shift, a remembering of something that was always there, but always just beyond your reach. Saturn's role in this illusion is subtle but central. Its energetic signature may interfere with natural human rhythms. It governs artificial time, hours, minutes, deadlines, decay, all of it meant to anchor you in linear thinking. But your true self isn't linear. It's expansive. And when you're forced to operate within Saturn's code, your consciousness is compressed, slowed down, and made digestible by the system that feeds off limitation. Now take a moment and ask yourself, how many of your fears, habits, and beliefs are actually yours? How many were planted, repeated, reinforced until they felt like truth? You fear death because you've been told it's the end. You fear failure because the system taught you shame. You obey authority because you've been trained to equate obedience with safety. But none of that is real. It's all part of the grid, the simulation, the loop. And then there's media, the echo chamber that amplifies Saturn's narrative. The stories that glorify order, vilify chaos, reward conformity, and mock anything mystical or unexplained. The systems that keep you constantly entertained but never enlightened. You're fed just enough information to feel aware, but never enough to see the whole pattern. And even when truth leaks through the cracks, it's buried under ridicule or noise. But perception is not fixed. It can be reclaimed. You can stop letting external signals dictate your inner reality. You can pause before reacting. Question what you feel. Trace every belief back to its origin. Awareness is like a crowbar wedged between you and the programming. Once you insert it, the lock begins to break. The world you live in is not the one that truly exists. It's the one you've been told to see. And the moment you remember that, really remember that, you've already begun to wake up. It doesn't take a revolution to shatter a system like this. It takes awareness, quiet, steady, relentless awareness. The spell Saturn casts isn't one of brute force. It's subtle. It moves through routine, symbolism, time, belief, and fear. That's why it's so effective. Most people don't even realize they're under it. And like any illusion, it loses its power the moment you truly see it for what it is. You've likely felt glimpses of truth before. Moments when time seems to dissolve, when something inside you stretches beyond the physical. When you feel that undeniable pull that you are more than a body. That you've been here before. That this system, this planet, this society, this endless grind, isn't the whole story. That whisper inside you wasn't imagination. It was memory. It was truth trying to get your attention. To break the Saturnian spell, you don't need to fight the system directly. That only keeps you entangled in its game. You need to step out of the framework entirely. Begin by questioning everything, especially the things that feel so normal you've never even thought to examine them. Start with time. Your entire life is ruled by clocks. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. But time is an illusion. It's not something you experience. It's something you were taught to obey. Saturn's magic is embedded in that obedience. You're rewarded for punctuality, punished for delay, conditioned to believe that success comes only with schedules, milestones, and goals, none of which belong to you. They belong to the system. Every time you race the clock, fear the deadline, or feel guilty for resting, you're aligning with Saturn's code. But when you slow down, when you unplug from the artificial rhythm, you begin to sync with something else entirely, something timeless, something real. This is why ancient wisdom traditions have always pointed inward, not because the outer world doesn't matter, but because the outer world is a mirror. If the mirror is cracked, what you see will always be distorted. Hermetic teachings, especially those hidden in texts like the Kybalion, speak of the principle of mentalism, the idea that all is mine, that reality itself is shaped by consciousness, not the other way around. And when you fully understand that, you stop being a victim of frequency, you become its architect. Every moment you bring conscious awareness to a thought, a belief, a behavior, you pull it out of the automated program and into the light of your sovereignty. You begin to remember who you were before the conditioning, before the programming, before the loop. And once you remember that version of yourself, even for a second, you realize the control was never permanent. It was a trick of the lens. Ritual, intention, and vibrational awareness become your tools for freedom, not superstition, not avoidance, just clarity. You don't need to escape the earth or destroy the system. You need to awaken inside it. You need to see Saturn's spell as a pattern of thought, a framework of belief, an energetic script that can be rewritten. Because when you truly wake up, Saturn's rings no longer bind you. They become visible, and what's visible can no longer control you. You were never meant to break this alone. That's the other half of the trap, convincing you that your awakening is isolated, that your clarity is rare, and that no one else sees what you see. But the truth is, this moment in time is different. Cracks are forming in the structure. The frequency of the Saturn matrix is losing its grip, not because it's weakening, but because more of us are remembering. And once remembrance spreads, the illusion begins to collapse under its own weight. The system thrives on division, left versus right, science versus spirit, race, gender, class, status, endless false binaries designed to fracture our energy. Because united minds are dangerous. Consciousness in community is a force that can rewrite reality itself. The Saturnian grid was never built to withstand collective awakening. It was designed for fragmented souls, disconnected beings, who would never share what they saw. But that's changing. Every time someone questions the narrative, steps off the path, says no to blind obedience, or simply asks, "What if there's more?" the matrix trembles. You see it in the rise of alternative knowledge, the return to ancient wisdom, the growing disinterest in hollow careers and scripted success stories. The Saturn system was built for predictability, but the awakening human is unpredictable by nature, and that's what makes us uncontainable. The rituals that once controlled now appear absurd. The holidays, the political cycles, the consumerism, the empty celebrations of false achievement, they begin to lose meaning, because people are beginning to feel something deeper, the knowing that these rituals weren't born of spirit, but of structure, that they were never designed to elevate, only to pacify. And when enough people stop playing along, the ritual dies. Language itself begins to shift. New symbols emerge, new stories are told. The collective conversation moves away from fear and into sovereignty, and the more that truth is spoken, the more others remember. Because awakening is contagious, it spreads through resonance. It doesn't need to be forced or evangelized. It simply needs to be lived. When you embody truth, others feel it. And even if they don't understand it right away, something in them stirs. That's how this unfolds, not through revolution, but through resonance. The Saturn matrix feeds on unconscious participation. Without it, the illusion weakens. That's why your awareness matters, not just for you, but for the field. You are contributing to the collapse of the construct every time you act in alignment with your own truth. Every time you reject a lie, you unplug from the circuit. Every time you see the black cube and choose not to bow, you reclaim energy that would have been fed into the grid. It's subtle, but real. This is the warfare of consciousness. You don't need a title, a following, or a platform. Your field, your personal energy, is your platform. It sends ripples outward. It gives silent permission for others to rise. And when those ripples start intersecting, something shifts in the grid. The control begins to dissolve, not because it was attacked, but because it's no longer being fed. This isn't about taking down Saturn. It's about remembering that Saturn is only one layer of a much larger reality. Its spell is strong, but it is not infinite. Its symbols are everywhere, but so is your power to decode them. And once enough minds begin seeing through the veil stops serving its purpose. It's not a war of flesh. It's a war of perception, and the side that sees clearly wins. Escaping the Saturn matrix doesn't mean leaving Earth. It means leaving behind everything that was never truly yours. Beliefs you inherited, fears you absorbed, rules you followed without knowing why. Liberation is not something given to you by the system. It's something reclaimed when you stop consenting to live by its terms. Saturn's grip is built on your unconscious agreement. Break that, and the prison dissolves. The path out isn't marked by external signs. There are no maps, no manuals, no guaranteed outcomes. That's what makes it real. It's not a destination, it's a shift in orientation. You stop looking for truth in authority and start sourcing it from within. You stop measuring time and start experiencing presence. You stop asking what you're supposed to do and start listening to what your soul already knows. Much of this path is about unlearning. You were taught to obey, to fear death, to chase productivity, to worship structure. None of this is natural. It's Saturn's design, reinforced through institutions and rituals that pretend to serve you, while feeding off your energy. You were taught to work before you could play, to earn before you could rest, to prove your worth through suffering. These weren't lessons, they were bindings. Shackles dressed up as discipline. But once you see the game, you can choose to stop playing. You can create your own time, not dictated by hours or deadlines, but by rhythm and resonance. You can live by your own values, not borrowed from culture, but born from direct knowing. You can start trusting the quiet voice within, the one that was silenced long ago but never stopped speaking. It begins with presence. The more you become aware of the present moment, the less hold the loop has over you. Time loses its grip when you stop fearing it. You're no longer rushing to meet its demands. You're no longer being pulled by its artificial urgency. And in that stillness, you begin to feel something you may have forgotten entirely: sovereignty. With sovereignty comes choice. Not reaction, not programming, not performance. Real, soul-level choice. You start to see your relationships differently, your work, your goals. You realize how many of your decisions were made under the influence of fear of lack, of failure, of judgment, of being left behind. And when you trace that fear to its source, you find Saturn's fingerprint every time. But now you see it, and that changes everything. The deeper you go into liberation, the more you understand. Your energy is sacred. Your attention is a currency. Your soul is not a resource to be mined. And so you begin to live differently, not just for yourself, but as a signal to others. You become the anomaly in the system, the outlier, the one who didn't follow the loop, the one who woke up. The escape isn't upward, it isn't outward, it's inward, and the tools are subtle but powerful. Meditation that clears the noise, discernment that sees through lies, curiosity that refuses to settle for surface-level answers. These aren't trends, they are sacred weapons. They weaken the frequencies that hold the trap in place. And the final piece? Intention. Saturn's system runs on automation, ritual without awareness, symbols without meaning. But when you bring intention into your actions, you distort the control field. You begin to live outside the loop, not as a reject, but as a creator. The system cannot process a being who remembers their own divinity. That's the one thing it was never built to contain. Because the moment you truly remember who you are, the rings of Saturn can no longer hold you. This was never just about Saturn. It was never just about time loops, symbols, or parasites hiding in unseen realms. It was about you, about the long-forgotten truth that your consciousness is far more powerful than the system ever wanted you to know. They built the grid to contain you, but the grid only works when you believe you're small. When you forget that your awareness is multidimensional, eternal, and sovereign. That forgetting was their greatest achievement. But remembering? That's yours. The Saturn matrix was designed to feel inescapable. From birth, you're surrounded by rituals, language, and beliefs that reinforce limitation. The illusion is crafted to feel airtight, so complete that you never think to question it. You're taught to explain everything away, to trust only what can be measured, bought, or verified by consensus. But truth doesn't need permission. It only needs presence. And once you become still enough to feel what's real, the lies begin to unravel on their own. You are not from here. You may be in this body, in this realm, subject to these laws, but you are not of them. Your consciousness predates this system. Your awareness is not bound by Saturn's rings or the laws of the matrix. It's been distorted, not destroyed. You've been looped, not lost. You've been asleep, not broken. And that's the beauty of it. What they feared most wasn't rebellion or resistance. It was remembrance. Because once you remember, you can never truly be controlled again. Real freedom isn't about overthrowing the system. It's about making it irrelevant. You stop feeding it with your energy. You stop bowing to its rhythms. You stop validating its stories with your belief. The moment you withdraw your consent, even silently, the spell begins to weaken. And that's when your true life begins. Not a life of escape, but a life of expansion. You start living from your center, not from the programming. You move with purpose, not pressure. You create from clarity, not confusion. The rings around Saturn aren't your prison. They're your mirror. They show you where you've been looping, where you've believed the lie, where you've mistaken the false light for the truth. But now you see. And what you see, you can change. You were never meant to stay small, silent, or subdued. You were meant to remember. And in remembering, reclaim everything that was taken from you without force, only suggestion. This is the quiet revolution, the sacred rebellion, not one of destruction but of detachment. You rise not in rage, but in remembrance. And from that space, you begin to live a life that no longer serves the system but serves the soul. You already know more than most. But don't stop here. The deeper layers can't be said out loud. They're shared inside Insights Academy, where we go beyond the surface. Sign up now and receive the Kybalion ebook for free, a guide written long before the grid, designed for those ready to break it. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."